North Carolina voted to make their local elections nonpartisan, meaning they didn't want their candidates to be known by their party affiliations. But the Obama Justice Department overturned their vote, and you won't believe why. Fox's own Griff Jenkins has the shocking story.
We have never been just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are and always will be the United States of America.
Folks here in Kinston turned out in record numbers to support Barack Obama and his call for a new era of bipartisan politics. So you can imagine their surprise when the Department of Justice stepped in and overruled the voters' decision to move to a nonpartisan election format.
It's a ruling some are calling patronizing and self-serving. It implies that African Americans, a nearly two-thirds majority in the city, are unable to protect their own self-interest, and that black candidates need to be associated with the Democratic Party in order to be elected to office. Black conservatives and scholars we spoke to are outraged.
It's a patronizing notion that these folks can't make an intelligent decision without a party label.
I think this is a racist policy that Eric Holder is trying to push forward. I mean, again, it's very degrading, and I think it's wrong for them to do this.
In other words, blacks can't really have a fair election without this sort of social engineering on the part of the government. That's extremely patronizing.
Kinston is only one of 9 districts still holding partisan elections in the Tar Heel state. Yet, given that Kinston is overwhelmingly Democratic and that last year's primaries cost the city nearly $20,000, ending partisan elections seems like common sense. Abigail Thernstrom, the vice chair of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, agrees.
Nonpartisan voting is very widespread in North Carolina and throughout the country. This is not some wild conservative idea that's thought of as depriving blacks of the right to vote.
In fact, it was the difficulties that an unaffiliated candidate, Hilary Greene, faced when running for city council back in 2007 that led Kinston resident Stephen LaRoque to push for the change.
And I was reading about it in the newspaper, didn't know her. And I thought that was ridiculous, that anyone in a small hometown like this should have to go out and get 600 signatures in order to get her name on the ballot to run for city council. And so I contacted a city council member, Will Barker, and asked him if the city council would consider changing over to nonpartisan elections.
When the city council wouldn't consider it, Stephen petitioned and got the referendum on the ballot in November. His campaign was successful, and the measure passed by a margin of nearly 2-1. However, under the Voting Rights Act of 1965, Kinston is one of about 12,000 cities in the nation where changes in voting procedures are subject to the Department of Justice oversight. And so in a letter dated August 17, 2009, the city received news that their request for nonpartisan local elections had been denied. Months later, both LaRoque and Greene are dumbfounded by the decision.
I can't understand how an unelected bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. can tell the city of 22,000 in East North Carolina, you don't know what you're doing.
Eric Holder, please come to Kinston, bring some people, see what's going on down here.
Eric Holder's Assistant Attorney General, Loretta King, authored the DOJ's letter of dissent, arguing that the legislation's, quote, effect will be strictly racial, and that removing the partisan queue in municipal elections will, in all likelihood, eliminate the single factor that allows black candidates to be elected to office. She said such consideration was necessary because the low voter turnout among African Americans in the district had led her to consider them, quote, a minority for analytical purposes, even while acknowledging that, quote, black persons comprise a majority of the city's registered voters. When we reached out to the DOJ for comment, both King and Holder declined to speak with us. So we asked several experts for their opinions on the matter. Their responses were resoundingly negative. They agreed on 3 key points concerning the ruling. It's patronizing to African Americans.
It reinforces the message to black voters and to potential black candidates in order to be represented in this country. You have to be voting in a majority black district, and as a candidate, you have to be elected from a majority black district because whites are too racist.
It's an abuse of the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
The Voting Rights Act was simply never meant to compensate for voter apathy.
The Voting Rights Act was intended to eliminate barriers to registration and barriers to voting for minority voters. Everyone in Kinston admits There are no barriers to registration. There's no barriers to voting. And yet the Justice Department is objecting to this. What they're really doing is they're protecting the Democratic Party.
And finally, that this decision threatens to heighten racial tensions at a time when America finally seems to be moving past them.
This is the ultimate in what Barack Obama said he wouldn't bring to America. He said we were going to have a post-racial society. This marinates us further into a racial stew.
But this isn't the first time Eric Holder's Justice Department has made controversial decisions concerning elections. The failure to investigate Acorn, their recent decision to drop the voter intimidation case against the new Black Panther Party in Philadelphia, and now the Kinston case all point to a disturbing pattern.
If we don't have confidence in the integrity of our elections, by the rules by which we govern ourselves, by the rules by which we elect candidates, then people lose faith in the whole political system.
And what about the citizens of Kinston? How do they feel? We came to this popular diner, Christopher's, to see what's on their mind this morning.
Basically what the Department of Justice and the City Council are saying, we don't care about your vote. I mean, if they don't care about it, why do we vote in the first place?
The people of the town spoke and said this is what they want. I think it should have been left up to the people.
Are we going to continue to let the federal government take our rights one step at a time, and before long we won't have any rights?
That's why taking everything from us, my personal opinion.
So what's next for this small city? Can the ruling be reversed? In order for that to happen, the City Council would have to appeal the decision, but that seems unlikely. After meeting with Justice Department officials back in August, 4 of the 5 members benched a motion to pursue an appeal. We sat down with one of the councilmen who is backing the DOJ's decision.
I agree with what DOJ has done and will not vote to overturn that, and will fight in any way possible to make sure that that decision stands.
But Stephen LaRoque isn't about to give up.
I've been in contact with several folks in Washington, D.C. and across the country have contacted me, actually, interested in taking the case. I may be a plaintiff in a lawsuit against the DOJ's decision.
Perhaps this appeal will be successful and force the Justice Department to finally give the residents of Kinston change they can believe in.
And that is all the time we have left this evening. As always, thank you for being with us, and I hope you have a great weekend and a happy Halloween. We'll see you back here on Monday.